Hello BIO178. This is our last proposal focused video, and here I'll go over the last section, which is the broader impacts. And the broader impact section is a little bit different, and I like this section because it gives us a chance to think a little bit more creatively about why our research is important and what kind of positive impact it can have. So as scientists, I personally am driven by the research side. I find molecular ecology research super interesting, but I also really want to have a positive impact. I want what I'm doing to positively affect other people. And so the broader impact section is a way for us to think about how this proposed work that we're writing about, how that can actually come about. How can our work we're proposing actually help people and have a positive impact? And so really what we're doing in the broader impact section is describing how your work will lead to desired positive societal outcomes. So again, that's why this section is a little bit different. Oftentimes as scientists we think about, oh, I do the research and that's it, but this section is you actually explicitly have to describe how your work is going to contribute to make these positive strides in society. So one of the things you should be doing in this section related to what I just said is describing how your proposed work has the potential to benefit society, right? So it's important not for us to think about our research abstractly, but here in this section, we're really connecting it to that analogy I use, that drop of water, and it has the ripple effect. How is your research, which I think of as that drop of water, how is that going to have these broader reaching effects? And that's, in how I think about it, the benefiting society part. So these broader impacts activities can be accomplished either through the research itself. I personally don't think this is often the case for like molecular ecology science type studies. I think maybe for social science work, it can be more applicable. So for me, usually I don't see broader impacts being accomplished through the research itself. Broader impacts can be accomplished through activities directly related to the research, or broader impacts activities can be complementary to the project. These are apparently complementary colors. I don't know anything about art, but that's what the Dr. Google told me. So often when I am thinking about writing proposals and I'm thinking about broader impacts for my work, it falls into this category where I'm thinking about activities that are complementary to my research itself that will help to accomplish those positive societal outcomes. And oftentimes those activities that are complementary to the project are related to some kind of outreach activity that can promote several different things. So NSF has specific criteria listed for outreach activities and things that they want to promote to, again, benefit society. I'm showing a few examples here. So you can propose complementary activities to your research that help to promote the full participation of women, persons with disabilities, historically excluded people in STEM. That's one way. So basically increasing diversity in many different forms for people within our STEM community. It can be related to improving STEM education. So I'll talk about a few examples later on, but when I was a grad student, one of the programs I was involved in, I spoke to, I don't know what grade they were, but they were elementary school science teachers, and I talked to them about my work so they could then take it into their classroom and have these current cutting edge, quote unquote, research examples to tell their students about. Another outreach activity that would be important are things that promote public engagement with science and public scientific literacy. So by creating exhibits at museums or aquariums, for instance, that's a way to increase public scientific literacy and the public's engagement with science. by taking the science to them by places that are commonly visited by the public, like aquariums and museums. So this is an example from a student. So Kristen Schulte was in this BIO178 class several years ago now. She is currently a master's student here at Sac State, and she went on to submit a full NSF/DR FP proposal and actually received honorable mention, which is amazing. She was the first MS student at Sac State to receive honorable mention, which is a huge deal. So here I'm including the broader impacts from her honorable mention DRFP. And she talks about how she lectures to the undergraduate field biology group here at Sac State. She talks about how she wants to develop an undergraduate research experience to help in her work. So she works on ringtails, so she talks about that. And she talks about she wants to make science accessible, so that's the public engagement part. And so she actually talked about involving citizens in her sampling. So not only having scientists, science, biology undergraduates, but also citizens, the public, helping her in her sampling. And so I didn't read this whole statement. If you want to pause the video, you can go ahead and read it on your own. But here I've pulled out a few examples illustrating how this statement hits the broader impacts criteria. So I'll give a few examples here, thinking about some of the more common outreach activities you might think about. This isn't an exhaustive list. You can definitely think of other things as well, but I'll walk us through some of the examples that I often think about. So if we're thinking about outreach activities that promote full participation of women, persons with disabilities, historically excluded populations, there are a couple examples I'm showing here. One of them is this program called Letters to a Pre-Scientist. So I have been a pen pal for this program for, it's my third year now. And the goal of this program is to demystify science careers and to help students who often are students who have been historically excluded from participating in STEM, having them connect with the real scientists and help them see that this career is accessible to anyone, and really to help demystify scientific careers and help them understand really what scientists do. So these are pen pals generally in elementary school. My pen pal this year is in 5th or 6th grade, I believe. So that's one really great program, Letters to a Pre-Scientist. The bottom image here is illustrating an event that's actually held, well, in non-COVID times, held at Sac State every year. It's called Expanding Your Horizons. And this is a program that focuses on exposing young girls to science. So this picture here, the woman on the right, Anessa, she again is a student who was in this BIO178 class last year, and she participated in this event as a mentor, and she helped create an activity where the students participating in this event got to, I believe, measure cichlid fish, which is part of the undergraduate research that Anessa did. So other examples of outreach activities are things to promote improved STEM education. So this is another program that I participated in as a grad student. I worked with the Ocean Discovery Institute. This is in Southern California in San Diego. But what they did is help to supplement the science curriculum of students in schools who, again, often these students were from historically excluded populations from STEM. And what they would do is bring those students into the Ocean Discovery Institute lab. These students ran gels, so I went to visit once or twice, and I was completely impressed by what these, I think they're like 4th grade students, what they were doing. If you've run a gel in your lab classes at Sac State, they're not terrible, but they're relatively involved for a scientific activity, and they have these 4th and 5th grade students doing them. This is a picture of a student loading a gel, so that I think is super cool. They're giving these students exposure to these opportunities that, for me, I didn't run a gel until college, and these elementary students are doing it. Another category of outreach activity is one that promotes increased public scientific literacy and public engagement with science. So some things you could think about here are creating some kind of exhibit at a museum or aquarium. This is an exhibit at the Birch Aquarium in La Jolla that's affiliated with Scripps Institution of Oceanography. As I mentioned in the example from Kristen, you can also engage citizen scientists. So this is a picture of how citizens, so technically non-scientists, members of the public, they can help in intertidal field surveys. So it looks like they have some identification to help them figure out what they're looking at, and they're looking at different quadrants here in the intertidal. Another outreach activity you can think about for discussing and addressing in your proposal are outreach activities that promote the development of a diverse, competitive STEM workforce. So one thing you could think about doing is training REU students. REU stands for Research Experience for Undergraduates. And so we're talking about this from a proposal standpoint, but also if you are currently an undergraduate, you should look into these programs because they're a really good way for you to gain immersive, hands-on research experiences. Of course, you can get that at Sac State, but these are basically full-time summer programs where they give you a stipend, so you're getting paid to do this research, and you're also doing this fully immersive research experience. So that's another way, if you're thinking about it from the proposal standpoint, you can mention that you will explicitly and intentionally mentor some REU students to involve them in the research you're proposing. So those are some examples. Now let's talk about some logistics about how you actually figure out what to write about for your section in your proposal. And that's what I like about this section, is that really it depends on what matters to you. So it's an opportunity for you to think about, what do you value and what do you feel passionate about for making a difference related to your research. And for me personally, maybe you might think about qualities or ways that you have been affected or ways people have helped you persevere in your scientific career so far. So think about what matters to you and how you would like to give back. So once you've identified that, you can start to think about maybe one or two of those outreach categories that we discussed earlier. So maybe you're passionate about STEM education, or maybe you're passionate about increasing diversity of people in STEM, something like that. And then once you've identified that, what I would recommend is finding concrete, specific organizations and ways for your research to contribute to these efforts. So instead of saying something vague and nebulous like, I will help improve diversity in STEM, that's great, and yes, I hope everyone values that and finds it important, but without concrete examples or steps, that statement honestly doesn't mean that much. So if you're able to find concrete organizations like Lenders to a Pre-Scientist, for instance, if you can have these concrete examples, first of all, it shows you've done your research, and a reviewer will understand that you've actually made concrete plans for these outreach activities to occur. And really, it makes this whole section much more specific and believable, and they'll be even more convinced that you actually will make a positive impact with your research because you've already taken some initial steps to do so by initiating partnerships, identifying organizations, that kind of thing. So let's revisit our little tower of blocks, and we're done building that tower. So we have just added on this last broader impact section. So now we've discussed all of the sections that need to be included in your final proposal. So hopefully now you have a better understanding of what to include in that last section, and what you can do for the assignment for this module now is write drafts of these last two sections for your proposal. And then we'll get you some feedback on those, and you can make any adjustments as needed before you turn in that final version, which is really the culmination of all this work you've done so far this semester. So let me know if you have any questions, and keep up all the hard work, and I'll see you in the next video.